Today I'm going to tell you how to read more books, do it more effectively, understand them better, and get more pleasure out of it. This video is based on scientific research as well as recommendations of writers and scientists who have appeared as guests on my podcast. In my experience, I used to read more than 100 books a year in the past. Now I read around 50 books a year in their entirety, as well as extracts from many more. I'll tell you about getting in the habit of reading regularly and about reading multiple books at the same time. I'll dispel the speed reading myth and shed light on what's called fractal reading, as well as tell you more about book clubs, summaries, and many other topics related to reading. My tips are mainly relevant to non-fiction books, but some of them are still applicable to fiction. Some of my friends read very little and ask me, how do you make time for reading when you've got such a packed schedule? Well, there is nothing superhuman about it. The secret's in the regularity. If you want to read one book per week, which is, let's say, 400 pages on average, divided by 7, that's 50 to 60 pages a day. If the book isn't extremely complicated, then reading this amount in around an hour is quite doable, even if your reading speed isn't very fast. So, if you want to finish a book in 2 weeks' time, then you only need to read for half of this time, half an hour a day. That's really not a lot. The majority of us spend a lot longer scrolling through their social media. So, the main thing that you need to do to read more is to read regularly. The best thing to do is to form a habit to read every day. Neuroscience research suggests that daily habits are easier to form than the habit of doing something every other day. So, the perfect solution for the majority of people is just to dedicate a specific time every day to reading, which you'll strictly stick to every single day. And you have to think of it as you would of a time allocated to a meeting or a study session or a doctor's appointment, so you cannot cancel it. You can cancel it only in exceptional circumstances, when you've got a really good reason. You can even add it to your calendar. I, for example, have my reading session set from 12:30 a.m. to 2 a.m., which gives me an hour and a half every day. I'll be honest, I'm not a very organized person, so I sometimes mess up and skip a day or two, but usually I manage to read for an hour and a half before bed almost every day. Apart from reading before bed, I also try to read during the day, whenever I get a chance. For example, I read on the plane or when I'm in a taxi and so on. I also listen to audiobooks and read book summaries. I'll talk about these later in the video. This tip may sound counterintuitive to many, but I recommend reading multiple books at the same time when placed in different circumstances. The books have to be located all around you and always be available to you, so that you could grab one anytime without having to give it much thought. And just read. Whatever is going on around you, you take a book and read it. When in doubt, take a book and read it. You have to have books on your shelf, your bedside table, your ebook, your tablet, your phone, everywhere. You have to have books, both fiction and non-fiction, for all the different moods, for all the different physical states and times of the day. Ideally, you should aim to have books of different formats, so print, electronic, audiobooks, so that you can read or listen to them in any situation. Everybody must run into this problem sometimes when you're reading a really long, dense book, a little every day, and one day you realize that you don't have the energy or the desire to keep reading it, and so you end up not finishing it. Sometimes you just don't have the energy for reading dense literature, and the brain's craving something a little lighter. If you, like many others, read no more than one book at a time, then you're stuck. You don't want to keep reading the book that you've already started, and you don't start any new ones while you're still on the previous one. So you end up reading less, extracting fewer good ideas from the books you read, and you deprive yourself of many opportunities in life. That's why you need to have several books to suit different moods and different situations. If you don't want to read a 1,000-page long scientific book by Nicholas Nassim Taleb, Just read a different book, something lighter and more entertaining. If you're tired of reading about Daniel Kahneman's psychological experiments, take a break and switch to a book that is about something radically different. You can come back to Kahneman later when you're in the mood. This way, reading will always be fun and never a chore. And you won't feel the pressure to read that one unfinished book that you've got lying around that you've got to finish. No more. There's one more advantage to this kind of reading, and it is that you don't read books in one go, but you read them over the course of a few weeks, which helps you digest dozens of different topics. At this rate, your brain digests the information that you put in a lot better. When you acquire different kinds of knowledge in parallel and you take a long time to digest them, let's say you acquire knowledge of physics, medicine, psychology, history, and artificial intelligence, all at the same time, gradually accumulating new knowledge. That's how you learn at universities and at schools, and there's a reasons why they do that. It works. By the way, you don't have to read books till the very end and start at the first page. I got this advice from Naval Ravikant, one of the most influential investors in the Silicon Valley, the founder of AngelList, as well as the investor in Uber and many other companies. So the first part of this tip is that you don't have to finish all the books you start. Sometimes you just can't get into the book, and you can clearly see that the experience of reading it is neither beneficial nor enjoyable. Even if everybody thinks it's an absolute must-read, maybe it's just not up your alley. If that's the case, just don't hesitate to drop it. Furthermore, in many non-fiction books, the reader only really benefits from reading the first few chapters, and later on you usually get nothing more than some practical examples and anecdotes which support the author's claims. So you don't have to read such books from cover to cover. The second part of this tip is less obvious. You don't have to be afraid to start a non-fiction book from the middle. This is the easiest way to determine whether this specific book is a must-read for you or not. Sometimes you open a book and at the beginning the author showers you with a bunch of intriguing promises to change your life, but by the end, you realize that the book is full of cliches and you discover nothing new. On top of that, sometimes you just wanna extract concrete bits of information out of a given book. For example, you wanna find specific practical tips instead of reading long paragraphs of theory. In that case, you can simply leaf through the book. You just study the chapters and then you start reading from the one that interests you the most. Naval Ravikant says that you should treat the book chapters as you would treat separate blog posts or separate journal articles. After all, you don't usually read all the articles in a journal or all the blog posts available from first to last, right? Ravikant has one more thesis that I like, which is to treat reading as an experiment. Try books and put them aside if you don't get into them. It's okay to buy 10 books and not finish 9 of them, if you have the last one provide you with an invaluable piece of wisdom that is going to influence your entire life. Woody Allen once said, "I took a speed reading course and read War and Peace in 20 minutes. It involves Russia." This joke has a grain of truth in it. I don't see anything wrong with speed reading if you're simply skim reading a text and rereading some bits of it without sub-vocalizing them, especially if it's a part of a book that you don't find particularly insightful or if there are too many unnecessary details. These parts of a book you can and should skim read. But I'll still give you a reminder just in case. Speed reading is a myth. If it's the speed reading of the type, I read 1 page in 5 seconds, or I started reading 3 times faster without compromising my reading comprehension using Secret Service's super secret method. No, if someone promises to teach you how to do that, don't listen to them. There are very rare cases in people with photographic memory, or it's also called eidetic memory, such as Mike Ross from the series Suits, for example.
Civil liability associated with agency is based on several factors,
including the deviation of the agent from his path, the reasonable inference of agency on behalf of the plaintiff, and the nature of the damages themselves.
So they can memorize a page per minute, but it's something you're born with once every million births, I think. So it's not something you can learn to do. A normal person can learn to read faster only one way: by reading more. The more you read, the faster you learn to read. Do you remember how they used to measure our reading speed at school? Naturally, the kids who read more than their peers got the highest scores. If you start reading more, with time your reading speed will gradually increase and you will be able to read more, read faster, and improve your comprehension. You will be able to read 2 or 3 times faster than an average person. But that's not going to happen through some mystical life hacks, speed reading techniques, stuff like that. Don't believe those people. I also want to note that there are definitely cases where reading fast is not a requirement. When you are reading a classical piece of fiction, for example, I think it would be criminal to skim read it instead of letting it sink in. You have to involve both your thoughts and your feelings when you read a book like that. You have to savor the style and think over the issues that the author raises. I can say the same of many of the non-fictional must-read classics, which are also packed with wisdom. For example, I read a page or two of Marcus Aurelius's Meditations before going to bed sometimes, and there is no rush, absolutely. I enjoy those 2 pages thoroughly and I read slowly. When we talk about nonfiction, I'm a big fan of summaries. They can be really useful sometimes. A lot of nonfiction books can easily be replaced with a short synopsis of 10 to 20 pages. Some bits of information can be much better conveyed, not through a book format, but in the form of a long article or a blog post or a summary. The thing is, the modern world's got a problem with obsessing over books. Writing and publishing your own book gets you prestige and raises your value as an intellectual public figure. They start paying you more for talks and consultations, plus you can earn quite a lot of money through the book sales themselves. This is why many people, many public intellectuals publish their own books when what they have to say can much better be conveyed using other shorter formats, but they still need a book to boost their value on the market. I often start by reading the summaries of recently published nonfiction books first, and I just see what I can get out of it. I know the key conclusions, and then I decide whether I want to read the whole book or not. Or I decide which parts of the book I want to have a closer look at, as well as which chapters I can skip altogether. Fractals are various endless bifurcations, like veins on a tree leaf or different psychedelic ornaments on a computer screen. You know what I mean. So when you practice fractal reading, you slowly absorb different branches of the book. For example, before you even read the book itself, you read its summary, you watch an interview with the author and you watch their TED talk, you read their first and last chapter, you read a couple of Amazon reviews, and then you make a decision whether you want to read the book from cover to cover or not. Or often fractal reading is enough in order to benefit from a book and realize that it's not worth reading. I myself often do this. For example, when Nassim Taleb's book called Skin in the Game came out, I started by reading several chapters of it, which he published online on his blog. Then I read the summary of the book, and only then did I actually sit down and read the book itself, once I've made sure that it definitely is a must-read.
I'll make that deal.
And it doesn't mean that I have read every single word. Sometimes I skip bits that seem to me too obvious or long-winded. What's the best way to really understand a book? Studies have shown that the best way to absorb the information is by explaining it to someone else, or simply discussing it with someone, or at any rate doing something with it. The best solution is to document in some form your thoughts and ideas after you've finished reading a book, and to do that for every single book you read. Starting a blog can be a great way to do that. Even if you aren't a blogger yourself and if you aren't interested in becoming one. It may be good to have a private blog on your personal Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook page, and just use it to write short posts about every book you've read and liked, about its insights, and share it with your friends on social media. If you do that, you can even promote your personal brand online, which is really useful these days, you know. So at least you will note down your ideas for your own use, or you will maybe even benefit from doing this in other ways. Another great thing you can do is join a book club, where you can have discussions about the books that you've read. For example, I have a book club like that with my friends, and I've recently decided to make it available to my Patreon subscribers. So once a month, we get together to discuss one must-read book we've all read and share practical conclusions that we've come to. Now that we are in quarantine, we meet up on Zoom. So you can join our book club too if you want. To gain access to it, support me on Patreon, the link's in the description. Finally, I recommend listening to audiobooks in addition to reading books. Do it when you're doing the washing up or running on a treadmill or taking a walk or driving somewhere, etc. It really helps maximize the volume of readable information that you consume, especially now that almost all the best books get an audio release only a short time after they have been published in print. I hope that at least some of you find my tips helpful. I'd just quickly like to advise you against going away now to try to start reading 500 pages every day. Modern studies in neuroscience have shown that the best strategy in order to introduce changes into your routine is by taking baby steps. If you don't really read at all, start reading for at least 5 minutes a day, but do so without skipping a day. Don't do 500 pages all at once. You will definitely fail, you will not keep up this habit. And the important thing is forming a habit. So then you can start gradually increasing the amount that you read per day. There will be more videos about forming good habits on this channel in the future, so we'll definitely get a chance to talk more about this topic. Please subscribe to my Twitter and to my blog on Medium. You'll find the links in the description. I've recently posted on Medium a long list of the best fiction and non-fiction books that I recommend, as well as the best free online courses and YouTube channels to watch while you are in quarantine. And also, we've got a giveaway. Please leave a comment under this YouTube video and tell me about your best reading life hacks. The author of the most interesting comment will get an ebook called How to Read a Book by Mortimer Adler, an American philosopher, a great one, by the way. So, like, subscribe, hit the bell button. See you next week. I'm Greg Must Reader. Bye-bye.